A dramatic twist has emerged in the case of Iran's women's national football team after several members who sought asylum in Australia changed their decision. 3 members of the delegation have now withdrawn their asylum applications and are traveling back toward Iran, raising new questions about pressure, politics, and the safety of athletes competing abroad. 3 members of Iran's women's national football team delegation have decided to return to Iran after initially seeking asylum in Australia during the recent Asian Cup tournament. The group, 2 players and 1 member of the team's technical staff, had previously applied for humanitarian protection after expressing concerns about returning to Iran. However, they have now withdrawn those applications and are traveling to Malaysia to rejoin the rest of the team before continuing their journey home. The development comes after a week of uncertainty surrounding the athletes' future. In total, 7 players and support staff members from the Iranian delegation had sought asylum in Australia following the tournament. According to reports, the first group of 5 women applied for asylum shortly after the competition ended. They were granted humanitarian visas by Australian authorities and moved to a secure location while their applications were being processed. Later, 2 additional members of the delegation also requested asylum, bringing the total number to 7. However, the situation quickly became more complicated. One of the newer applicants, a young player, soon changed her mind and asked to withdraw her asylum request. She expressed a desire to rejoin the rest of the team, which had already departed Australia and was traveling through Malaysia. During this time, there were also concerns about a possible security breach after the address of the safe house where the asylum seekers were staying was reportedly shared. Authorities responded by relocating the remaining women to another secure location. As the situation unfolded, journalists and analysts began reporting that some players may have received messages from contacts in Iran while staying in Australia. According to these reports, the messages allegedly warned the athletes about potential consequences if they refused to return home. Some of the reported threats were believed to involve the safety or well-being of family members still living in Iran. These claims have not been independently confirmed, but they have raised serious concerns among observers about the pressure athletes may face when making decisions about asylum. Iran's sports ministry has presented a very different interpretation of events. In an official statement released through state-linked media, the ministry said the decision to return demonstrated the national spirit and patriotism of the women's team. The statement claimed the players had resisted what it described as psychological warfare and propaganda designed to convince them to remain overseas. It also accused Western governments of attempting to interfere in the team's affairs, specifically suggesting that Australia was acting in alignment with the agenda of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Australian officials have rejected those claims. Labour MP Christy McBain said the Australian government had been transparent about the steps it took to support the athletes. She emphasized that the women were given the opportunity to make their own decisions about whether to stay in Australia or return home. According to McBain, providing the players with that choice was the priority. Sports journalist Tracy Holmes, who has closely followed the situation, said the developments reflect the complicated and sensitive nature of asylum cases involving international athletes. Holmes explained that while some players may have genuinely wanted to return home, others may have faced difficult decisions involving their families and personal safety. She also noted that questions remain about how the process was handled, including whether the athletes had sufficient access to independent legal advice while considering their options. At this stage, 4 of the 7 individuals who initially sought asylum have left Australia. 3 members of the group remain in the country and have not withdrawn their asylum applications. Their cases are still being processed, and their future remains uncertain. The story has drawn international attention, highlighting the intersection of sport, politics, and human rights. For many observers, the situation raises broader questions about the pressures athletes may face from countries with strict political systems when competing on the global stage. For now, the fate of the remaining players and the long-term consequences for those returning to Iran remain closely watched by governments, human rights advocates, and the international sports community.